Following weeks of heightened military tensions and uncertainty, diplomacy is once again taking center stage. Qatar has become the latest venue for indirect discussions between the US and Iran, both sides pursuing technical negotiations aimed at preventing another escalation and restoring stability to one of the world's most strategically important waterways. The discussions go beyond the immediate security situation in the Strait of Hormuz. They touch on sanctions, frozen Iranian assets, regional de-escalation, maritime security and the broader future of US-Iran relations. While Washington says its envoys have held positive meetings with regional mediators, Tehran insists no direct negotiations with American officials are taking place, highlighting the fragile nature of this diplomatic process. So can indirect diplomacy succeed where confrontation has repeatedly failed? What does each side hope to gain from those negotiations? Could these technical talks evolve into a broader political breakthrough with regional implications? I'm Hani Saif, and let's find out on In Depth. According to the New York Times, indirect diplomacy between the United States and Iran has entered a new phase in Doha as negotiators work through Qatari mediators to implement a ceasefire and prevent renewed conflict in the Gulf. The newspaper reports that the discussions focus on practical confidence-building measures, including restoring safe commercial shipping through the Strait of Hormuz, addressing sanctions-related issues, and laying the groundwork for broader negotiations. While U.S. envoys Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner traveled to Qatar to consult with the mediators, Iranian officials stressed that no direct meetings with their American representatives were planned, underscoring the continued political sensitivity surrounding the talks. The report notes that significant differences remain over key issues, but both sides appear determined to avoid another military escalation after recent exchanges of fire. We're joined from Washington by Ms. Ginger Chapman, the political analyst, and from Cairo we're joined by Ms. Monica William, the international relations expert. Ladies, welcome to In Depth. Now, Ms. Chapman, the latest developments suggest that both Washington and Tehran are willing to continue indirect engagement despite their public disagreements. From a political perspective, what does this decision, what keeps it going through these talks, the mediators, to tell us about the priorities of both administrations at this stage?
Well, first, thank you, Mr. Haney, for having us today. Greetings to your viewers and to your other guest, Ms. Williams. And these talks must continue in order to, first, salvage Trump's presidency, second, to salvage the world economy, and third, to give the illusion that we are making diplomatic progress. We know that Trump's lack of strategy is creating confusion in diplomatic relations. First, this is because Trump's goals are not clear. He keeps stating the nuclear weapons is the most important issue. The Strait of Hormuz is a visible defeat for Trump because the strait was open before the war started, and now the strait has become critical to America and global economy. And the Strait of Hormuz is a symbol, a sign of Iran's leverage, de facto leverage and dominance in these wartime conditions. The Strait of Hormuz is a great pressure point and leverage for Iran to use against Trump and the West. So Trump, we see from his statements, Trump is desperately trying to calm the oil markets. A great example is he announced his attacks, and attack struck Iran after the markets closed on Friday. And then on Monday, when the markets opened, he stated we were now engaging in more negotiations in Doha at the request of Iran. So Trump's statements are designed to calm the markets, also to market and sell this war to the American people who are overwhelmingly opposed to this war. And Trump is also trying to save face. He is looking for a way out that looks like a victory. However, there is no victory here for Trump to be found. His only successful option to salvage the world economy would be to withdraw American forces and negotiate, even though the American negotiating team, Witkoff and Kushner, are hopelessly outclassed in technical expertise as well as diplomatic depth. And in truth, they are real estate developers. They are in over their heads. So these talks in Doha, diplomatic channels, the diplomatic path must progress, but the fear is that Trump will resort to a military escalation if he cannot get a clear win from the diplomatic path.
Well, Ms. Williams, these talks are taking place now after weeks of heightened regional tensions and the military exchanges. How important is this diplomatic momentum for the wider Middle East? What sort of message does it send to regional actors who have been calling for de-escalation and having Qatar as the main mediators now?
Of course. Hello, and thank you for having me today. Greetings to Ms. Champion. Let's agree that the current diplomatic momentum is highly significant because it demonstrates that despite recent military escalation, which of course we follow up last week, all parties recognize finally that the high force of broader regional conflict, and the talk sends a clear message that diplomacy remains a preferred mechanism for managing this crisis, even when a strategic disagreement itself presents. And for regional actors that have consistently advocated for de-escalation, particularly, of course, the Gulf countries, these negotiations reinforce the importance of dialogue, mediation, and crisis management as essential tool for achieving global and regional, of course, stability and protecting the economic world. On the other side, of course, the negotiations are focused on several issues, and the highly sensitive file that has obstructed previous diplomatic efforts. This includes the implementation of ceasefire arrangements and security guarantee, humanitarian, and the mechanism for the exchanges of the, of course, different aspects for Iran, and on the other side, discussion continue over regional security and concerns in the different and strategic calculations for the United States. The indirect format itself reflects a pragmatic negotiation strategy. It's totally different if we can compare by the previous editions of negotiations between U.S. and Iran. Qatar has increasingly, as you said, established itself as a credible mediator capable of facilitating dialogue between parties, between Iran and the United States that remain unwilling or politically unable to negotiate face-to-face or to especially, as we say, for the the technical issues and sensitive, politically sensitive matters behind closed doors, while minimize public pressure, or while we talk about the public opinion in U.S., there's a lot of agreements in this ceasefire agreement, and on the other side, it's the same for Iran internally or public opinion inside. And of course, there is significant obstacles still remain. Deep mutual distrust between both sides continue to construct relations between the Iran and the United States, while there is a lot of interpretation for the implementation mechanism and the procedures instance, the Strait of Hormuz. There is a lot of technical issues regarding this, and the nuclear file, of course, is part of this. And Lebanon front is still the main obstacles in this regard. We have to say that the regional actors and, of course, Qatar in this regard maintain different strategic priorities.
Ms. Chapman, now Trump's envoys are meeting the regional mediators from Qatar rather than the Iranian officials directly. Tehran says that there are no talks between them and the American envoys have been scheduled. Is that true, or are they rejecting face-to-face negotiations? And this indirect format, right now after already signing the MOU, shouldn't they have direct contact between each other? I mean, can it still produce meaningful progress, these indirect talks now?
Well, first, these indirect talks could produce further progress. And indeed, what we saw with the JCPOA is much of that negotiation was carried out by teams of experts in their particular area. So for the nuclear enrichment, the centrifuges, the inspections, America and former President Obama had teams of experts that were negotiating with the Iranian experts. Here, our diplomatic field is very shallow. So we now see that the Qataris and Pakistanis are negotiating on behalf of the Americans with the Iranian negotiators. It is understandable that Iran does not want to meet face-to-face with the Americans. Why reward the Americans for constant breaches of conditions in the MOU? And indeed, what is truly remarkable is that Trump has signed the MOU, put his name on it. J.D. Vance, the vice president, was in charge of negotiating these terms in Islamabad. And now we see that Secretary of State Rubio has negotiated a completely separate agreement between Israel and Lebanon, wherein that agreement is in conflict with Article 1 or Paragraph 1 of the MOU Trump signed. So this
then
shows
how is that
on
possible?
The
how can you seriously take, all these different versions of an agreement seriously?
Exactly, Mr. Haney. And this is why this highlights the chaos on the side of the Americans, the lack of a clear strategy, and the pressure from the Israeli lobby is greater than the pressure on Trump from his voters. We see that Trump is becoming increasingly unpopular. This war is unpopular. Our economy is increasingly close to the brink of gasoline rationing. So there are no clear wins for America or for Trump. And by Secretary of State Rubio negotiating this conflicting agreement with Lebanon and Israel, this is a way for Israel to say, see, we are complying with the MOU, but they have negated and invalidated the MOU. This leaves Trump in a very bad position. In fact, many analysts are looking at America's activities in the Middle East, the fact that Trump is funneling more military equipment, more ships, more planes, more troops into the Middle East. They're wondering what Trump's true intentions are. In America, we have the Lindsey Graham Warhawk faction that is saying, finish the job, pushing Trump back into escalation with Iran. At the same time that economic analysts are saying America is on the brink of catastrophe, economic catastrophe. We are seeing prices climb in the grocery store. Some analysts are talking about the need for rationing. We know that it was China, who is helping keep oil prices down by not importing oil and by sharing China's massive oil reserves with their allies, with other Asian partners, including American allies such as Korea, Japan, and Australia. So China has been helping American allies through this energy crunch at the same time that Trump's approach is chaotic. Our negotiators, Witkoff and Kushner, are trying to serve many masters. They are avowed Zionists, so they want to negotiate a deal that is good for Israel, but any deal that is good for Israel will be bad for America and for the rest of the world. So we are in a diplomatic and escalation trap where our only good options are to withdraw, but the pressure on Trump is too great. He is being pushed into escalation, and even within the White House, within the Trump administration, there is an increasing rivalry between Rubio and Vance over the 2028 presidential nominee, but more immediately over these competing visions of how to attain peace in the Middle East and how to bring this war to an end, and most critically, how to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. The Strait of Hormuz is the linchpin.
Yes, well, Ms. William, now Qatar has emerged as a key diplomatic mediator along with Pakistan, one of this region's most sensitive crises. How then would Doha and the Pakistani mediators as well deal with these different versions of an agreement, be it from Marco Rubio or the agreement that President Donald Trump signed himself? How do they deal with it?
Thanks for your question, and I want to totally agree with Ms. Trump in this regard, and I want to add something, that this distribution of responsibilities provided by President Trump with a further margin for strategic maneuver by allowing different officials to project different messages in different ways. The administration preserves flexibility in its negotiating stance. And if diplomatic progress becomes possible, nowadays U.S. can emphasize the contrived messages delivered by J.D. Vance, for instance, if negotiations stall or regional tensions escalation. The administration can instead highlight the more assertive position articulated by Marco Rubio and other officials at the constituents like Kushner or Steph Witkoff. So this approach enables the administration or Trump to avoid being locked into a single policy trap. It's choosing exclusively between diplomacy on the other side pressure. He can pursue both sides or both passes in the same time and adjust the balance between them according to development on ground.
Yes.
And of course, if we can say that the Pakistani and the Qatar role is very important.
It is definitely a very important one, but one final question, Ms. Chapman, I mean, in less than a minute because we're almost out of time, but I need to ask you this. Now, recent statements from the U.S. officials somehow project confidence that actually Washington is negotiating from a position of strength. How important is the political messaging in parallel with the diplomacy? And could the public rhetoric influence the course of these negotiations, keeping in mind and considering all of these divisions and conflict of interest within the U.S. political spectrum?
Trump is all about marketing, presenting a victorious image. However, Trump has lost control of the White House. He has many different factions fighting for control and how to continue this war or the negotiations. And this will only get more chaotic as the midterms get closer.
Yes.
Trump is in a political fight. He is worried that if the Democrats win the House, he will be impeached. If the diplomatic negotiations fail, he will be responsible for a depression such as Herbert Hoover. He's mentioned that is his fear. He may wind up more like President Nixon, resigning over the quagmire of the Vietnam War. So everything is unpredictable right now. Iran is lending structure to the negotiations. They're providing a step-by-step path forward, but the Trump White House right now is chaotic and under a great deal of pressure. So
and it's
Iran
definitely gonna heat up. Yeah, it's definitely gonna heat up even, I mean, the closer we get to the midterm elections. Ladies and gentlemen, that was Mr. Ginger Chapman, the political analyst, and from Cairo, Ms. Monica Williams, the international relations expert. Ladies, thank you very much for your insights. Now, the outcome of the Doha discussions may not be determined overnight, but the resumption of indirect engagement reflects a shared recognition of the high cost of further escalation. Whether these technical talks remain limited in scope or develop into a broader political process could have far-reaching implications for the regional stability, the global energy markets, and the future of US-Iran relations. I'm Hani Seif. This was In Depth.